Nic Peterson here, and we're going to talk about achieving mastery, learning rapidly through trial and error. Okay, and this is probably the most overlooked aspect and the most important for somebody that wants to achieve mastery and and understand the practical application. Like, what is the point of learning stuff if you can't apply it to life? And this is kind of where that gap gets bridged because there's a big difference between reading something and thinking you understand it intellectually and knowing how to apply it to life. And that's where mastery it becomes useful. You can know all of the music theory in the world, and you can even know how to read music and know how a piano is built. If you can't play the piano, then what have you really mastered? You know, one of my favorite quotes is, "You cannot teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar," right? And this is kind of a lot of intellectuals or people that consider themselves intellectuals and consider themselves learners aren't really learning and internalizing anything because they will read a book all day long, how a bike is made, how to ride a bike, how does physics work, what is inertia, and say, okay, I've read a lot about a bike, but it would be nonsensical to think that you have actually learned how to ride a bike. You might feel productive, but you haven't learned how to ride a bike. Okay? So basically, it doesn't matter if in theory you know that when you're riding a bike, you start veering to the left, you're supposed to turn into that, right, to prevent from falling. Intellectually, even if you understand that, the first time you start veering to the left, you're going to turn to the right to compensate, and you're probably going to wipe out. Only then have you actually internalized and learned the reaction, right? You've actually learned that if I don't want to fall over, I turn into the turn and correct myself. I'm groovy, right? So this is the difference between this abstract reasoning, this abstract concept. That's what you mostly get out of books. But through trial and error, you begin to understand the practical application, which is where things actually happen in the real world. Big difference. Big issue we have now is, it becomes in our minds, in society, we kind of separate more and more blue collar, white collar. And we have just these generalizations. And working with your hands, doing the damn thing, has become considered a lower form of intelligence, which is handicapping a lot of people that think using big words and memorizing fancy words to impress their friends is learning. But it's not. It's memorizing. And rote memorization is not what I'm interested in. There are plenty of techniques. Google them. They're everywhere. But we want to go through this trial and error to develop these mental models and internalize an understanding of how the world works around us and how things actually work. If you talk to any top expert on the planet, lawyer, surgeon, biochemist, any top expert on the planet, statistician, politician, and you throw out an idea of how you think things work, there's a really good chance they say, no, it doesn't actually work that way. In theory, in books, on TV, maybe. But in real life, there's like this ecology to consider, right? Like human behavior and stuff like that. So only through trial and error can you really learn and internalize anything. Favorite example, the Wright Brothers said, hey, I want to build a flying machine. Let's do this. And they kind of entered the race with a bunch of people that had way more funding, way more education, way more resources. And they still put the first man flying machine in the air. And the reason is, one, they developed a mechanical knowledge, meaning they actually used the invention they were trying to create and improve. Okay, so there's this tacit knowledge, which is like 90% of the stuff you don't know how to explain, right? So maybe this chair feels wobbly and I know how to fix it, but I don't know how to explain how it feels wobbly to somebody else. That would be a tacit knowledge. So they developed a mechanical knowledge by doing this and used the tacit knowledge. The fact that, it just felt a little bit off balance. It was a bike with wings pretty much, back to the shop, tweaked it, ran it again, which gave them their second advantage. Not only were they able to adjust with their tacit knowledge, the knowledge of knowing how things feel, they were able to run more tests than anybody else. And that was ultimately the key to their success, was the trial, the minor adjustment, the repetition, right? So the trial, the error, the minor adjustment, the repetition. And they got their huge advantage by picking a location and a setup that allowed them to do more trials. They failed a lot. And what I like to do is I like to take the word failure and replace it with discovery. So I would say they discovered a lot. It's a little bit easier on the ego. But whatever your ego suffers, or your confidence by failing or discovering, is so greatly overweighed by the stuff you are learning. Because if you are intelligent and you are willing to get your hands dirty and try and fail and try and fail and try and fail, you're going to end up with a form of knowledge nobody else has. You're going to have this tacit knowledge, which we all develop throughout time, and this mechanical knowledge that other intellectuals don't have. And this is where mastery becomes expedited. And we'll talk a little bit about how to get into this cycle of greatly increased returns on learning. It's pretty cool. But it starts with the trial and error. If you cannot get your hands dirty, if you're not willing to work with your hands and get in the middle of it, the craftsmanship is going to suffer. And it'll never achieve any kind of true mastery, any kind of 1%er, right? So big difference between reading about something, understanding it intellectually, and then really truly understanding the concepts and the principles and how they manifest in the real world. And this real world manifestation is where the real world mastery happens. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Just think about when you took your driver's license test and you read all about how a car works, how gas works, how brake works, how you got to stop at the stop sign. You could read it a million times. Those pathways to make them automatic, which we'll talk about later, but those pathways, those neural pathways, aren't developed yet. So you haven't really mastered the art of driving. You have mastered the theory of the way everybody should drive. Very, very different. In fact, you could become a master driver without ever understanding any of the rules fully, right? You don't ever have to read a book to become a master in the real world at a craft. So there's a huge difference. Reading, nodding your head, saying, yes, I understand, is not learning. And you will not achieve mastery without that mechanical knowledge, working with your hands, discovery, which is trial and error and adjust, trial, error, adjust. And again, we'll get into this cycle of accelerated returns where you get so much better, so much faster than anybody else. You become a top 1% in like 10% of the time it would take anybody else to do it. So that's that mechanical knowledge. Okay, use your hands, use your feet, whatever, use your elbows, whatever it is that you need to develop that tacit knowledge so you can use the mechanical knowledge to get better than everybody else. Hope you guys realize you just got hit with some really powerful and pragmatic stuff. Don't you think? I do. And if you agree, hit the thumbs up button below and like the video. Let me know in the comments what other videos you want to see, what you want me to expand upon, and what questions you have. And remember, all of this stuff is only as powerful as the actions you take in your execution, the practical applications you can derive from it. So let's see how quickly and effectively and efficiently you can master the things to come. You're going to get information here that's going to help you on your journey that you will not find anywhere else. So be sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss one of these videos.